in the shadows of bustling cities and quiet villages alike. Secret societies have risen to wield unimaginable power not through elections or legitimate business, but through fear, violence, and bloodshed. These were the Mafia families, criminal organizations that infiltrated every level of society, amassing fortunes while leaving trails of broken lives in their wake. But no matter how strong they seemed, each one carried the seeds of its own destruction. Greed that turned allies into enemies, violence that invited retaliation, and arrogance that blinded them to the long arm of justice. Today, we're re-stepping into the Underworld archives to examine the most powerful Mafia families in history, their calculated climbs to dominance, the brutal acts that defined them, and the inevitable collapses that teach us timeless lessons about the folly of a life built on crime. The story begins in Sicily, the birthplace of what we know as the Mafia. In the 19th century, as Italy struggled with poverty and weak central authority, groups of men banded together in rural areas, offering protection to farmers and merchants. This was the Sicilian Cosa Nostra, our thing, a network of clans bound by blood oaths and a code of silence called America. Among its most feared factions were the Corleonesi, a ruthless clan from the town of Corleone that would briefly seize total control. By the mid-20th century, one man embodied the Corleonesi's savage ambition, Salvatore Toto Reina, known as the Beast. Reina didn't rise through diplomacy, he unleashed war. In the 1980s, during the Second Mafia War, the Corleonesi slaughtered over 1,000 rivals, including women and children if they stood in the way. They bombed judges, prosecutors, and anyone who dared challenge them. Reina's clan controlled heroin trafficking routes, extorting businesses across Sicily, and even influenced politics. At its peak, Cosa Nostra under Reina seemed untouchable, raking in billions while terrorizing an entire island. But power built on pure brutality has a short shelf life. Reina's endless killings created too many enemies. Even within his own ranks, informants emerged, tired of the paranoia and loss. In 1993, after 23 years as a fugitive, Reina was captured in Palermo. He died in prison in 2017. His empire shattered by arrests and defections. The moral lesson here is clear. Unchecked violence breeds isolation and betrayal. Reina thought fear would secure loyalty forever, but it only accelerated his downfall, proving that terrorizing your own people destroys the very foundation of any organization. As Sicilian immigrants fled poverty and mafia violence for America in the early 20th century, they brought Cosa Nostra with them. In the Prohibition era of the 1920s, bootlegging alcohol turned street gangs into empires. New York became the epicenter, where 5 major families emerged as the most powerful in the American mafia, often called La Cosa Nostra. The architect of this structure was Salvatore Charlie Lucky Luciano. Born in Sicily, Luciano arrived in America as a child and quickly climbed the criminal ladder. He saw the chaos of gang wars and proposed something revolutionary. A national commission where families settled disputes peacefully or as peacefully as mobsters could. In 1931, after orchestrating the murders of 2 old-school bosses, Luciano helped establish the 5 families Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, Bonanno, and Colombo. These weren't just gangs, they were sophisticated syndicates controlling labor unions, construction, gambling, loan sharking, and later, narcotics. Of the 5, the Genovese family has long been considered the most powerful and enduring. Named after Vito Genovese, who seized control in the 1950s, it earned nicknames like the Ivy League of the Mafia for its secrecy and discipline. Luciano himself started what became the Genovese family before his deportation. Vito Genovese was ambitious and merciless. He once ordered a hit on a witness from his own prison cell. Under bosses like Vincent the Chinjig, who faked insanity for decades to avoid prosecution, the family infiltrated Wall Street, waterfront unions, and even the construction of landmarks like the World Trade Center through extortion. The Genovese avoided the spotlight that doomed others, focusing on low-profile rackets. But Genovese's steady wealth. At their height in the mid-20th century, they were the largest and richest, with thousands of members and associates. But ambition led to mistakes. The 1957 Appalachian Meeting, a massive mob summit raided by police, exposed their reach. Later, RICO laws designed to dismantle organized crime brought waves of convictions. Cagante died in prison, And though the family still exists in weakened form, its leaders learned too late that even the most careful empire can't escape persistent investigation. The lesson: secrecy buys time, but refusing to evolve or reform invites eventual exposure. Building power on illegal foundations means always looking over your shoulder until justice catches up. Closely rivaling the Genoves was the Gambino family, often the flashiest and most meaty. It traces back to bosses like Albert Anastasia, the murderous head of Murder Inc., who eliminated threats for the entire Mafia. But the family's golden era came under Carlo Gambino, who took over in 1957. Carlo was the opposite of flashy. Was quiet, calculating, and utterly ruthless. He expanded into new rackets, avoided unnecessary wars, and placed loyalists everywhere. By the 1970s, the Gambinos were arguably the most influential family, controlling New York's garment district, airports, and vast narcotics imports. Carlo's death in 1976 led to turmoil. His successor, Paul Castellano, favored white-collar schemes, but alienated street soldiers. Enter John Gotti, a bold underboss who orchestrated Castellano's 1985 assassination in broad daylight on a Manhattan street. Gotti, dubbed the Teflon Don, courted publicity, dressing sharply and defying prosecutors. For a time, he beat charges, boosting the family's notoriety. But ego was his undoing. Wiretaps captured him ranting about operations, and his underboss, Sammy, the Bull Gravano, flipped, testifying against him in 1992. Gotti died in prison in 2002, his family decimated by trials. The Gambino story illustrates a profound moral: seeking fame in a world that demands shadows leads to ruin. Gotti's love of the spotlight made him a celebrity, but it also made him a target. True power requires humility, something criminals chasing glory rarely possess. In the end, betrayal from within, often motivated by self-preservation, topples even the boldest leaders. The other three families, the Lucchese Bonanno and Colombo also, held significant sway. The Lucchese excelled in labor racketeering and had relatively stable leadership. The Bonanno family suffered from internal bans and the infamous Banana War. The Colombo endured bloody internal conflicts in the 1990s. Together, the five dominated American organized crime for decades, but federal task forces, informant programs, and RICO prosecutions eroded them all by the 21st century. Shifting back to Italy, while Sicilian Cosa Nostra weakened after Rina's arrest and maxi trials that convicted hundreds. Another group quietly surpassed it, the Ndrangheta, from Calabria. Unlike the hierarchical Cosa Nostra, Ndrangheta is built on blood families, literal clans, where loyalty is reinforced by marriage ties, making infiltration nearly impossible. They dominate Europe's cocaine trade, laundering money through legitimate businesses worldwide, from Australia to Germany. Estimates suggest Ndrangheta earns tens of billions annually, dwarfing other mafias. Their violence is targeted and discreet, avoiding the public wars that doomed rivals. Yet, even they face pressure. Major trials in recent years have jailed thousands, exposing networks. Teleson. From Ndrangheta's dominance, strong family bonds can sustain crime longer, but no organization is immune to determined law enforcement. Isolating yourself in secrecy might delay justice, but it also limits growth and invites global scrutiny. Looking across these powerful familista, Corleonesi, Genoves, Gambino, and Ndrangheta, we see patterns. Repeat. Ambition drives the rise, but greed fuels. Betrayal, violence secures short-term control, but creates endless enemies. And no matter the structure, whether commission-ruled or blood-bound, criminal empires collapse because they harm society, families, and ultimately themselves. The victims, innocent people extorted, addicted, or killed, far outnumber any temporary gains. These stories aren't tales of clever outlaws. They're warnings that choosing the wrong path leads to isolation, imprisonment, or death. The Underworld's most powerful families prove one undeniable truth. Crime doesn't pay. It destroys lives, erodes trust, and ensures that those at the top fall hardest. If these stories resonate with you, think about the choices that build real, lasting success: honesty, hard work, and community. What Mafia figure or event should we cover next? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like if you learned something new, and subscribe to Underworld Archives for more unflinching looks at history's darkest chapters. Stay safe out there.